I think it's real neat that your dog has a picture.
No way. you are here to make this even more of a special occasion. It's not a long, drawn-out affair, and Charles wouldn't have that anyway. He might not even stay for it. But I think that you're in, and I know that he's in for a grand surprise. I would like for us to pause and give thanks again for our food and for this day. Shall we pray? Oh God, you have called us and told us, wherever two or three gather in your name, there in the midst of us are you. Sometimes not capable or competent enough to be called your choir members, and certainly not always deserving enough to have the direction and leadership of which we have been so gifted. But thank you for making us feel special by your abiding presence and by the presence of Charles Duke. We're thankful for this food. We're thankful for this place in which that we may break bread together. In the glory of your name, through Jesus Christ we pray. Amen. Well, Charles, I suppose you wonder why we've called you here. He told me with a straight face after the service that he really didn't know. And I tell you what, if you don't think it's hard keeping something from Charles Duke, I mean, you know, you think Mordecai had big ears. There's a song, I'm sure someone else wrote it, but the Beatles sang it. What would you do if I sang out of tune? Would you get up and walk out on me? I don't know how Charles has been able to put up with us for 20 years, but we certainly have enjoyed his longevity and his ministry, and you're going to have an opportunity, even if you've only been here a few short Sundays or all of those years, to participate in the fun and the memory of that in these few minutes together. If I can reflect just a moment in somewhat nostalgia with you, as Jane and I began to walk down the aisle, it occurred to me that I was going to begin those introductions by commenting on that day, second Sunday of September, when Dr. Gray was ministering. And probably unbeknown to only one person, maybe two in this group, the robe which hid and hung over that stole of Charles's this morning was none other than Dr. Quentin Gray's robe. Totally unplanned, but that is the way that the Spirit works, folks. And I'm proud to have that back in the pastor's study, and I'm thankful for Marie sharing it, and I know that's even more special. Charles. I couldn't possibly begin to try to introduce you all and certainly get the right name, so what I'd like to do is put you on the spot for just a moment, and if we could, I know this is a bit informal, can we start over on this table, and if you have a guest or you are a guest and no one wants to introduce you, would you stand and do so? Florence, do you want to, is there anybody?
My daughter, my oldest daughter,
At this table.
How long we got?
I was going to say, get ready, folks.
I have a daughter, Charlia Bitter, from Pennsylvania. And I have Chip's family, Ruth and her daughter and son from Springtown.
Anyone else back there? John?
We have our daughter Allison, previously a member here, currently of Northway Christian Church in Dallas, and her friend Brad.
How about this table here? Okay.
I had my husband, Wayne,
My name is Charles Duke, and I'm sitting next to the doctor in case my heart doesn't fail.
He comes quite often, so don't really call her sister.
This next table here.
I suppose I could introduce my daughter one more time. This is Lori. Glad to have
Good
her.
to have you. Next table over. Yes.
Nancy Marshall, she's no longer, she's a visitor now, guys.
Okay, let's see anything more. How about this last table over here?
I'll introduce myself. Debbie Hargrave, formerly of First Christian Church, with my husband John, and it's our pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Where's Carly? Is she behind the pillar over there?
I can't even find you.
There, I knew she was.
I have 3 ex-members with me, two daughters and a grandson. This is Ann and Demi and her husband and her 2 little girls.
Again, reminiscing just a moment before we continue, on this day, 20 years ago, the CYF met at the home of Susie Howell. There was a Susie Howell. There was a meeting of the, trying to see what the name of the class was, that was not that familiar to me. Serving as elders was Joe D. Johnson, R.B. Jones, Albert Martin, Olin McCrary, and Ben Milliken. One of the deaconesses was, you remember being there that day, Kate? Mrs. Ralph Anders, isn't that you? You didn't know you'd been born yet, did you? Well, perhaps other of you were involved that day, pinch hitting or in ways that we don't know about, but it is fun. And again, just as a reminder, if you have not taken a moment to go back to the archives, Deborah Locktrog-Swindle is doing a wonderful job on display back in the library. You need to, because all of the things, everything you wanted to know, and more. If you have your little program with you, we will try to follow it as closely as we are able. I should like to have George and Joyce and Marjorie come forward for 20 years of Do-Re-Mi.
Thank you, Steve. I've got my secret stash under here. The scriptures tell us that among the disciples were John, the beloved disciple, and Luke, the beloved physician, to which we would add, among the disciples of our present day, one of our congregation, Duke, the beloved musician. For 20 long years, Charles Duke has contributed appropriate accompaniment, martial strains, throbbing, pulsating beat, ethereal waftings of angel song, choral and instrumental utterances in stately cadence, whatever has been needed to express emotion in music fit to mark the milestones of our lives. Weddings, funerals, morning worship, week after week, year after year. Our Protestant service of worship is centered on 3 elements: reading the scriptures, taking communion, and the sermon. The skillful weaving of the tapestry on which these essential events are highlighted is the responsibility of the organist choirmaster. From a 500-year accumulation of treasures is selected a prelude, 52 of them count them, 52, each Sunday morning to prepare us for worship. Bach, Handel, Franck, Brahms, Mendelssohn, and countless others require versatility, virtuosity, to be brought alive again to our ears from the score on the music rack. Then come the mighty peals, seeming to emanate from the very walls of the sanctuary, announcing the first great hymn of praise to our God, to be sung standing together as one by all of us. How marvelously our beloved Duke can line out the tune from his keyboard, lifting our attention away from our troubles and hurts and up to the very throne of perfection, and forward through the service, at home in every key, with sweet stops and old refrains, to lead us unerringly through the maze of enharmonic improvisation of which our Duke is truly a master. I've known internationally acclaimed organists who couldn't play a note that wasn't before their eyes on the music rack. How our Duke can tie it all together. Then there's his other instrument, the choir, from whose sometimes thinning ranks must be coaxed 4 separate strains of sound to merge in the congregation's ear as one utterance, if all goes well. Our being human, mostly volunteers, of assorted sizes and shapes and ages, and in varying degrees of commitment and musicianship, Duke has quite a challenge in his attempts to weld us into the ideal choral instrument. But he does it, and often with profound success. During his tenure as organist choirmaster here at First Christian, until the emergence of our present ministerial team of Steve and Jane, ministers have come and too often gone away. But through it all, Duke, the beloved musician, has been a rallying point, expressing hope and faith, encouragement and love, that this church will continue its sometimes glorious history of service to its members and its community. And now to reminisce and laugh together. Just a minute, let's get this speaker here.
Charles has recalled several times that when he came here, he had a black eye. I don't remember what the reason was, but we're convinced that he must have received it at the hands of disgruntled members of the church choir that he was leading. I am certain that they were as sad to lose him as we were glad to welcome him. It was a Methodist church, and having grown up as a Methodist, I know they can be pretty fierce. A little bit of history and some sidelights. My thunder was kind of stolen by the insert in the bulletin, so some of these things I'm going to say you've already read today. Charles graduated from Texas Wesleyan College as an organ major. Commercial, Texas Wesleyan College. And incidentally, wasn't it a pleasure to hear him play the offertory last Sunday? Aside from the prelude and postlude, you hear the organ mostly as accompaniment for the anthems. Of course, he does play the communion meditation music, and you may not be aware that he is often improvising, using no music, changing keys, weaving one hymn tune into another, even picking up on something just alluded to by one of the ministers and making it part of his tapestry. For example, last Sunday, Reverend Church quoted from the spiritual, "My Lord, what a morning," and Charles ended the communion music with that hymn tune, spiritual tune. Well, back to my remark about his being an organ major in college. He had been a church musician since childhood, being nurtured by devout parents, his mother herself a church pianist, and he also had spent a period of time as accompanist for the Baptist Hour Choir, a professional touring group. All of this is to say that he fully expected to devote himself to a career in church music. However, his music education degree had resulted in his having a teaching certificate. And shortly after graduation, the fine arts chairman and his organ teacher called to tell him of a position open in a local school district. And he requested that Charles set up an interview with the superintendent. Charles firmly refused, stating that he was not interested in being a teacher. His professor had to put extreme pressure on before he reluctantly agreed to the interview. And some 30 years later, he is still teaching there. Castleberry High School, where he goes every day with a song in his heart. And that superintendent, Mrs. Irma Marsh, became one of his warmest, closest friends. His fierce loyalty to the Castleberry school system and community is reflected in the equally intense loyalty his ex-students have to him. Just attend a Christmas concert at Castleberry High School and see the throng of former students crowd onto the stage to join in singing the carols they once sang on that same stage. So, he has combined his two favorite things, church music and teaching.
Well, where most of us choir members know Charles best is out there in the choir wall, directing and playing the organ. You know, most of us only suspect how difficult it is to play an instrument like the organ with both hands on different keyboards and often both feet in an intricate symphonic movement. And at the same time, directing a 4-section choir. How does he do it? It's a mystery to me, but he uses various facial expressions. Smiles, eyebrow raises, nods, widening of the eyes. Somehow, detecting and correcting unexpected lapses by whole sections. All of a sudden, the altos just aren't there. Or the basses are off pitch.
Hey, wait.
Or the sopranos discover a certain shrillness. Or the tenors achieve a notable mournful quality.
I'll take all the recognition I can get.
Once in a while, he is able to lift one hand from the keyboard for a meaningful gesture. It goes something like this. Circular gesture with a smile means, come on, let's look pleasant and confident anyway. fingers waving to get attention for acapella. Widening of the eyes for hold it, hold it. And noticeably pant for breath. A disappointing frown. Imitating our unprofessional demeanor when we haven't left our troubles outside the choir loft and it shows. 3 fingers in the air, which indicates which verse. And mouthing words when some choir members haven't even found the right response. So that they can differentiate. There, have I given away all the states? Well, we know that the choir is the most difficult instrument which Charles has to manipulate while maintaining dignity and decorum in the choir loft. But do you remember the old pipe organ? That hallowed instrument began in its last years to exhibit unpredictable geriatric symptoms. Wheezes, burps, whistles, and roars. There would be a mysterious whistle, and the choir would watch apprehensively as Charles manipulated the ivory stones. Of course, he was continuing the hymn or the interlude until at last the offending cipher, thanks to George, I use the right terminology, the offending cipher is found, was found, and finally one can turn on the cipher. Well, speaking of choir loft, you know the utter dignity of our choir director and organist in robe and stole as viewed from the sanctuary. But it's been interesting through the years to see what manner of shoes. Parked neatly beside the choir bench, there would be sometimes brogans, or there would be elegant wingtips, or there would be slip-ons in all leathers and colors. There would be sometimes formal pumps, gilly ties, and so on, all attuned to the other articles of dress underneath the robe. But here are the feet in the organ shoes with a life of their own underneath the choir bench. Well, sometimes things go on in the sanctuary that Charles doesn't know, but he ought to. He first senses this when all eyes of the choir to the back of the sanctuary, where there may be some confusion among the deacons, or maybe an elder has slipped on the stairs, or
Particularly venerable elder.
stumbled on the steps coming down to the choir loft and on the way to serve the communion table, and isn't in place, which requires noodling and an attenuated doxology. This our organist accomplishes while trying to see through his rearview mirror. Have you seen the mirror? What the trouble is, sometimes considerable improvising is called for, but Charles smoothly bridges the gap, and few in the congregation realize that anything is out of the ordinary. Getting cold. Never knowing just who will show up on Sunday morning in our volunteer choir, Charles deals manfully with short section and vocal glitches. But the heavy responsibility of choir members in other areas of service during the morning worship still dismays him, though he tries to hide it, as when there is almost a fruit basket turnover sometimes when various choir members are needed elsewhere in the worship service. I guess the only help for that is to get a whole bunch of more members to share in our wonderful and loving congregation. George, you want to tell a little bit about concerts that we call to our memory?
Oh yeah, man, we've had some great concerts. Where have we been? Where have we gone? We've gone to Pilot Point.
We started at Paladure Canyon for one day.
Oh, well, now, these were the trips, but you were talking about the concert? Pilot Point, Paris, Gainesville, to your folks, and Eastland to Jack's place. And we've got one coming up to Granbury. We're going to put that Disciples Church down there on the map in that community. And haven't we had some good trips? Man, Camilla and I and a bunch of us cooked for a week to get ready for that trip up to Branson, Missouri. And old Charles had to go break his leg. So came back with this thing elevated in a cast. Very dramatic.
Remember our trip to Colorado? We remember that meal on the Lock Trucks terrace there.
That was marvelous, and I had Forrest Sock's foot in my mouth all night. We were on this ski bus, and there was about this much room from your head to the top, and half the seats broke down. It was the most wretched trip.
Well, we'd already had the wits scared out of us on that trip, and Don's Jeep going down the mountain. I don't know how that went, but anyway. And then I think some of us got claustrophobia there. We didn't know we'd had it before then. But that trip, those bunks, it was something else.
Hey.
So I think Camilla and Joyce had to come home standing up all the way because they could not sleep.
Claustrophobia.
They've never forgiven me for that trip.
What a travel agency he had.
Well, our most elegant trip was the trip by plane, not by bus, to Mexico City for 4 days, where we ate and shopped and saw every sight there was to see.
Zona Rosa before the earthquake.
Yeah, I think our hotel and stayed at later, they showed pictures of one wall that came in.
It was gone. We got there just in time.
Well, there have certainly been lots of fun times, but there have been rocky times too in our congregational life, and Charles Duke has provided a continuity and a spiritual undergirding through a succession of ministers and interims. We've had serious and inspiring music in the choir loft. Some Sunday mornings, it's so inspiring and so uplifting that sometimes both the director and some choir members struggle to maintain decorum while wondering if the congregation can see the tears flowing out of our eyes. One of the reasons that Charles is a great musician, of course, is that he is a man of great sensitivity. And this is reflected also in extraordinary generosity of the Spirit. He is the first at the hospital, sharing in griefs and concerns, calling promptly at the home when there is a death in the family. But he's equally ready to celebrate with us triumphs and victories in the lives of choir members and of the congregation, and to spread the good word. For he has a basic optimism and faith, which many times has rallied our flagging spirits. And God bless him for that. George, how about a toast?
Okay, everybody on your feet. I propose a toast to Charles Duke. Raise your glass. Here's to Charles Duke, our beloved musician, who served long and well at our church, First Christian. At home at the organ or piano, whatever, he ne'er hits a sour note or pedal, no, never. With swell faith and Vox Humana, he coaxes from us our loud hosannas. With finger point upward, he raises our pitches, and mouthing the words, he saves us from glitches. From stanza to stanza, he transposes higher to keep us from scorching in Lucifer's fire. We're happy to be in the choir loft to ponder on matters celestial and not way down yonder.
Well, you've heard of the earthquake, wind, and now we're ready for some fire. Chuck Etheridge, one of our newer choir members, would like to share a brief perspective with you.
I didn't hear anything about brief before. You tear all this down. Some people suffer from the illusion that because people are school teachers that they're good public speakers. But it ain't necessarily so, because when you're a teacher, your students always laugh at your jokes because you have some sort of control of them, so you have no idea if you're funny or they're just trying to get brownie points. The other difference is I always wear socks when I teach, and I sort of forgot about this occasion today. But that's what you tell. They asked me to give the perspective of the new choir member, and this church has been very special to my stay in Fort Worth, and Charles has been especially special to that stay. I don't know how many of you all know this or not, but I lived in Fort Worth for nearly 2 years before I made the decision to join First Christian, and I was sort of worried about that. I think I came here 3 months before I actually joined, so it was a decision I took seriously. I went to several churches of different denominations. I grew up in the Disciples and didn't find one I was satisfied with, and sort of wandered into this one day and met Steve, who introduced me to Charles, and sort of the rest is history as far as I'm concerned. But when I think of Charles Duke, 2 words pop to mind. One word is admiration, and the other word is friendship. And I'll talk about my reasons for admiring Charles first. First of all, I don't know if you have any concept of how busy Charles Duke really is. When I first came here, I heard minister of music. Most of the churches I was in, as I was growing up, had full-time ministers of music, and I just assumed Charles was because of as much time as he spent at the church and the quality of the music that he produced at this church. And then when I found out that he had another full-time job directing a high school choir, I was quite awed. I think that would be the proper term. But he still has time to be a friend to people in the choir, and a friend and a person who gives guidance to the people in his high school. But I admire Charles Duke as a musician. As we all know, he's a fine director and a fine organist. We've had many testimonials already about that. But he's also a pretty good singer in his own right. I've had the pleasure of hearing and he's quite a fine singer, but I also admire Charles as a man very much, and I think that's where the friendship part comes in. When I first came to this church, first came to the choir, he made Alice and I feel personally welcome. Taking the time to visit with us, calling us, dropping by Alice at work when she worked over at Montague's across the street, visiting with her, giving us a sense that he really cared about us as people, and I really think he does. Also, he helped Alice and I both grow musically, probably more than you know. Alice would have an audition, and Charles, as busy as he was, would take the time to help her with a song. And when, I'm going to interrupt myself for a minute, 2 worst days I've ever seen Charles's face was one day when we had a service and there were no tenors, and the second worst was when there was only one bass, and that was me. So. But before that happened, he was willing to take the time with me to go over the music with me and made sure I knew what was going on and wouldn't totally fall flat on my face. So he's helped me grow as a musician. I respect him both as a musician for that and as a friend. And finally, and I don't know if it's most importantly or not, but he always, when Alice and I miss, takes the time to call us and just asks us how we're doing. Not, where have you been? There are no baritones, are they? But just as a friend. Are you okay? Is there a reason you missed? Is everything going okay? Not nagging, just concerned that we weren't there. And for those reasons, I am eternally grateful to Charles Duke, both as a friend, as a person, and as a choir director. And thank you very much. You did a very special job.
Now, if you will tune your ears, you can close your eyes if you'd like. In fact, probably some of these ones you have had your eyes closed because they will truly lullaby you. We'd like to hear a few moments as per the talent of Rick Morrison, who's put together a few of his favorite things, meaning Charles E.
She read of Jesus' love as he blessed the children dear, how he suffered, bled, and died upon the tree. Of his heavy load of care, then she dried my flowing tears with her kisses, as she said it was for me. Well, those days are past and gone, but their memory lingers on, and the dear old book each day has been my guide, and I seek to do his will as my mother taught me then, and ever in my heart his word abides. Blessed book, precious book, on my dear old dear Savior's I love to look. Thou art sweeter day by day, as I cross the narrow way that leads at last to that bright home above.
You remember those? And the wonderful thing is, as I stated at the conclusion of my newsletter, which Charles, I guess, will have to get the right copy to this week. We switched his and put an old column in there. Is that this isn't a goodbye party. This is a hello and thank you party. I want to just mention some people who, as you know already, are very significant in leadership of this church and have pulled this thing off miraculously. Conchita, where are you? Conchita, our artist resident. Designer and maker of the stole. Jodan Conger, our guardian at home and creative ideas of the Marcella Shirley, serving on the committee. Frank Harris, responsible for our inserts. And of course, how could we do it without Nanny? Ruth Vedder. Thank you. You have already seen, but I want you to take an opportunity, as I hope you do personally later, to thank George and Joyce and Marjorie and certainly Chuck for their contributions. Thank you. And also to Rick, who is editing, you heard, and Charles received a more complete tape just before Rick had to leave following the service, so he'll listen to that later. Now, we're almost there, Charles, but not quite. Jodan, I'd like to call upon you to come up and join me. We have a couple of presentations that we should like to make, and Mike is making his way up here with one of them. Your friends, Charles, it's good to have these friends. I hope after reading all of these notes that you will still call them that. We have compiled, through the grace and through, again, the creativeness of Kayla Wizenan, and who would have picked a color like that? Oh, I'm sorry. If you, a bottle of booze or a shirt? Leftover communion wine. No. If you did not get a note written or letter that you would like to share in this scrapbook, we'll be compiling it through this week. There is an envelope on the little desk as you entered in to place it in, or if you should like to mail it or simply hand it to Charles later on. But we are grateful to Kayla's Creations for this scrapbook of today and from your love and memories that will be shared through those notes too here.
11 years ago, I was invited to visit First Christian Church by the minister of music, Charles Duke. The music seemed to rise from the choir loft like angels' wings and hover under the stained glass dome. Many members have followed Charles into this sanctuary as a guest and stayed here to make this their home. We, the congregation, want to say thank you. Like church steeples reaching to the heavens, we look up to you. Accept our special gift and always remember, you are someone special. Wow.
First of all, and I hope I don't leave anything out because I certainly didn't get to prepare this, but it really was, it all is a surprise, and that makes it fun, the way my heart makes this. I think of, first of all, the love that's generated in this church. Of course, this didn't even have to be done today. I'm glad you did it. But that's the best thing of all. Some of us don't have to say we love each other every day because we feel it. We just know it's there. And I wouldn't take for that in this church. And I'm speaking yes to my choir, but I want, before I come back to them, just say, it takes a real unique and special congregation that doesn't understand all kinds of music, doesn't understand why the prelude is this way or why we tie this that way, but you're always there to support us. And the choir is aware of this. I don't know in the great big churches what the feeling is between choir and congregation, but I think that's one reason my life has been made richer in these 20 years is because we know the congregation loves and appreciates us. And that's just real special. Our choir does not walk in, as a lot of choirs do, just to do a job. Or may I say, to show out up in the choir loft. That's just not their reason. And without being too serious, knowing that George Stevens says he loves to be in the spotlight all the time. Even when old George can mellow himself and be a part of those angels up in the choir. And that's truly a compliment because George knows how much I love him. And he's been on stage all of his life and he loves it. So, congregation, thank you for your support. We try real hard to get down quickly after church and fellowship with you, but sometimes it's difficult. And I know this is getting too long today, so I'll try to make it short. But this may never happen again. I've just got to say what I feel. So I do thank you, congregation, for your support and your love and respect for your choir. And they deserve it. That's best of all. They deserve it because they work every week to make every Sunday special for you and to make our worship so distinctively sincere and hopefully to uplift you. Then I want to say to Jane and Steve, their loyalty to me. I told Quentin Gray when I came here, I could not come to staff meetings. So they do all of their planning knowing I will never be there for a staff meeting. And yet the freedom we have without your ever even knowing it, how the service flows, although we've never practiced. But there's just a feeling that we have for each other, and we hope you're aware of that. We love each other. And then I'll start with the three who displayed themselves up here today. And I'm sorry to say all of it was true. Even from the black eye the first night I came here, when the choir room was in the corner room up there at that particular time, but there's a post right in the big middle of it. And I said, is there any way we can move to another room where there's not a post right in the middle? So thanks to Beth Simpson and her class, they shifted with us and they moved to the other room and let us have the middle room where we are at this particular time. So I do thank George and Marjorie and Joyce for doing something George loves to do. Joyce and Marjorie, I'm sure, had to be coaxed into doing this. But didn't they do good? A lot of you know that we're only as good on Sunday morning as we come before we arrive at church to prepare ourselves ready to lead in the worship service. But the choir, as they mentioned, the trips we made together those 4 summers, and the concerts we've done away from church in the name of this church have been so special to us, and I know to the other members of those little towns that came to share those evenings with us. But to the families in our choir, the husbands and wives, 8 of them to name, the 8 couples, I think that's real unusual. And then to Nanny, our grandmother, who I could not have made it through those 2 years with my little mom at home without her. And I thank you. And then to the young ones. See, we don't have a youth choir. Where's Betty? There she is. When I came here, her little terrier was a little tiny thing, and the first Christmas tree we had up there in that choir room had little angels on it for the juniors in the choir. Now they're grown and married. And we're so glad. But since we don't have a junior choir or a young people's choir, we have a choir that spans quite an age, and I think that's real special. The big choirs have a graded choir program with 7 choirs. And I could have had that, I guess, but I didn't want that. I love it here. So I just want to say to my choir members, those that endure year after year, and Wednesday night after Wednesday night, and Sunday morning, of course, we are the greatest receivers of all, because we get to sing the great music and lead you in probably our favorite thing to do every week, and that is to make music together. So I've said it often, I am such a lucky man to have 2 jobs with wonderful young people at Castleberry and with a wonderful congregation at First Christian. So I don't want you to envy me, but I feel the lucky one. To all these years, 35 at Castleberry and 20 at First Christian, to have been happy in my work, and very few people can say that they're happy every day. And that didn't just happen. And that's the reason I'm the lucky one. And so grateful, really so very grateful for the times I've spent in rehearsals and in performance at school and then in worship here. And I do thank you. This is a real special day. I just can't believe all this happened, and I always have my nose stuck in everything. I cannot believe how this happened and just not to know about it. Wow. But again, I shall never forget this day, and the memories, and whatever this is, and the beautiful stove. Thank you, Conchita, for that. And I haven't saved Chuck till last, but I think they asked Chuck to speak because he's a teacher, for one thing. And he and Alice came here, as other couples have come, and I always love to say to them, we need you. The other churches don't need you as much as we do. And then they find they need us. And we think that's real special. But for Chuck, who kind of spoke for the future, and that's what we like. We love our past, and we enjoy the present, but we really look forward to the future. We just ain't dead yet. So First Christian, congregation and choir are well and alive and living in beautiful downtown Fort Worth. So if I've left anybody out, everybody's special. But to Joe Nunn, who's told many stories about the church meetings he's been coming to, and they really were, I find out now, and to all the planning that has gone into this, and those that did extra special things, I really appreciate it. And to those that are just here, when you have many other things to do, busy people. But probably last of all, that's what makes our choir so great. They're multi-talented people. Do you notice Sunday after Sunday those that do other things? And so again, they're the winners because they get to make music as well as the other things. So we thank you for sharing all the good times with us, many more to come, and to thank you for the beautiful gift. Thank you.
Before we depart and have opportunity to continue to greet and to pass on our appreciations and to have cake and punch for our reception, I should like for us to sing one verse of Blessed Be the Tie. That seems appropriate. You can understand how we had such a difficult time coming up with a title for this thing, since there's no other word that Charles picks out particularly to use frequently. But especially for Charles, let's sing for that tie. Blessed be the tie that binds our hearts in Christian love, the fellowship of kindred minds is like to heaven above. Amen. Thank you for making this indeed a very special day, and again to our special guest and honoree, Charles. Thank you.
That kind of